And we're live. Hello, everyone that joins us for our Monday lives. We came on a little bit later tonight because our internet sucked completely.
Yeah.
It happens sometimes. My internet was bad all day too. It kept going in and out. So it happens. It's everybody and their grandmoms online due to the current pandemic. So it makes sense that
Yeah.
sometimes the internet goes off a little bit. But I'm gonna do something really nice, Pete. You know what it is?
What's up?
Any guesses? Something I forget to do every time at the beginning of the podcast, which is ask all you guys out there listening to like and subscribe to the channel. And we actually got about 4 or 5 new subscribers after we posted the Star Wars podcast, which is out, guys. So thank you. I see that the numbers keep going up on that video. And we're getting close to 100, which is nice because it's a really long podcast, but it was a whole lot of fun, and it took me a little while to edit it down and add some music and stuff like that. But I'm happy for people that are watching it. We got a few upvotes, so comment definitely on the video. Tell us what you like, what you don't like about it, and we are currently watching Aliens movies, right?
We are, and I actually, man, I'm not going to talk about it here because we got a whole other podcast dedicated to that. But I had a blast watching the second one yesterday.
Now these movies are good. I haven't started yet. I've been a bad boy because I have to get ready for back to school because here in Brazil school starts now because we were actually on
Yeah,
our winter break down here, so it isn't it's a
exactly.
shorter
It
break.
was a cold fucking winter too.
Yes, it was. There've been worse, but this one was pretty
Yeah,
bad a
there.
few days.
It's weird. It's schizophrenic. There's days where it's like freezing, and then like the next day it's like 30 fucking degrees.
I know it's very strange down here. The weather in São Paulo. We're on a plateau, so we get all kind of weird weather. And so I haven't started yet, but I definitely can't wait to get into it. I'll probably start this weekend with the Alien movies. I've seen them so many times, though, I can almost rank them in my head. But it's nice to rewatch and just look for something. But yeah, guys, the longer podcasts, although sometimes these run a little bit long, but the really long podcasts are the ones where we do movie rankings, and they're usually I get Pete over in the house, so the sound quality is a little bit better. We don't have any lag or anything like no internet issues, so it's a real nice listen, and you probably even download them from YouTube and listen in your car and have a good time with it. But thanks everybody that has been checking it out, and check out the other rankings that we have on that playlist. I think we got Rambo, Halloween, Friday the
We
13th,
got
and
Rambo. Yes.
Nightmare on Elm Street. But with Pete, we did Rambo, which was really fun. That was a great one. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, that was fun. It was very we're just glorifying violence for about an hour and a half. But anyhow, today we're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff that we saw. I'm going to be talking of In Search of Darkness, which was a horror documentary, 80s movie horror documentary. And I ended up seeing another pseudo, not really documentary, but not really a movie called Blackisking, which just came out by the Queen, Beyonce. And if we have time, sneak in a little bit to talk about the Crucible, which I watched again this weekend after like 30 years or however long it was since I was in high school. And what about you, Pete?
I will be talking about a movie about a very critically acclaimed author that I've never heard of before by the name of David Foster Wallace. I don't know. Have you ever heard of David Foster Wallace?
I have not. I've never even heard of this movie. It's all new to me.
Yeah, I'm not surprised you haven't heard of the movie, but apparently, like, David Foster Wallace was a huge deal in the 90s, which is strange because I am a very literate person and I was alive in the early 90s and I never heard of this fucking guy.
Yeah, I've never heard of
But
them.
there's this whole
I
movie
can't
out.
think of too many authors from the '90s, though. I mean, I just can't think of too many authors that I was reading that were
John
like current.
Grisham. John Grisham is the one who comes to mind, actually.
Well, yeah, like pop artists, like pop writers. Yeah, like
Right, right.
I read
Yeah.
like Michael Crichton and all of those guys, but like actual authors, as they call them, or
Yeah,
whatever.
no,
No,
this
no,
guy was
author.
apparently compared to Hemingway and Vonnegut.
Oh, really? Oh, I gotta check it out because I've never heard of them. Yeah, because
And
when I was
I'd
a
never
teen
heard of
in
him
the
before,
'90s.
but it was a good movie.
Okay, and then La Casa de Papel, which we'll
And
get into.
La Casa de Papel, because I saw a lot of movies this week, man. I went on a movie binge, and I was like, man, I can't just pick one, because then that's disrespect. Like, the what is it called? The end of the tour, like, really stood out. But none of the all the other movies, they were kind of equal. So it's like, well, why talk about a movie? Why talk about a TV show that I actually happened to arrive at the end of the first season of? And I know you've seen as well, so that would be kind of unique because it'll be a rare occasion where we discuss something we've both seen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought La Casa de Papel would be a refreshing change of topic.
No, that's fine. And I've said this before to anybody that's listening. When we do what we're watching, it could be anything. Like you saw, like I saw a documentary, a 4 hour, 4.5 hour documentary, and then a 1.5 hour long music video, basically. So it doesn't always have to be a film that we're watching. It could even be maybe you saw a cool documentary on space aliens in ancient Egypt or something on YouTube and you want to recommend it. So what we're watching is really open to interpretation. As long as it's just not watching our bank accounts get smaller and smaller as the months go by.
Yeah, well, fortunately, I don't have a bank account, so I'm spared that problem.
Oh, what is happening here? Okay, we had a little bit of lag. We're back. You had mentioned stuff that it's true. A lot of times we haven't watched a lot of the same stuff that if I'm watching something you haven't seen it and vice versa. But I do try to make an effort sometimes to watch some of the stuff that you mentioned. And after last week's podcast, as soon as it ended, I watched that movie Targets and I loved it. So I'm giving a
Yeah,
real big recommendation for that movie Targets. It really felt ahead of its time. I always try to say this when with this expression ahead of its time. I think it's so overused. I think a lot of times things are on time, like it happened right when it needed to happen. Uh,
right.
but there's these few exceptions where you seriously do listen to something, whether it's music or film, where maybe it didn't capture the audience that it wanted to back in the day because it truly was ahead of the curve. Like people just weren't ready for it. And I'm watching this movie,
Yeah,
and I'm seeing stuff that's like, man, this is like stuff Quentin Tarantino's doing now, or even it reminded me of that movie Natural Born Killers and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
right.
It reminded me a lot of those movies. Um, and I don't know if it could find its audience back then because it was truly ahead of the curve of what you expect from a movie from 1965, I believe. And so if
68.
68, I'm sorry. So if you didn't listen to the last podcast, listen to it because Pete talks about the movie at length, and I'm not going to spend too much talking about it. But really cool movie. If you don't like some gratuitous violence, because it does involve a guy that goes on a sniping spree, and that's not a
Yeah,
big spoiler.
slightly.
Uh, but it just goes into this whole, he's a sociopath, and then at the same time, there's a parallel story of Boris Karloff kind of playing himself, right, in a way, because he's
It was very much playing himself. Yeah,
yeah, an aging horror movie star who doesn't want to do movies anymore because the horrors of real life are worse, or more intense than the horrors in the movies. And man, oh man, oh man, just watch it, and enjoy it. It was a really cool movie. So thanks for that. recommendation because it definitely became one of my favorite movies that I've seen in a long time. But anyway, let's get to it, man. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
start today. We're gonna go with horror, 80s horror, and what makes
Okay.
80s horror rock and roll. I imagine you're a huge fan of 80s horror, or no?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in the '80s. I had pay TV, which was awesome. It wasn't HBO. We had poor ass Canadian pay TV, which was like first choice and super channel. But we still got all the same movies, and yeah, fuck, I dug that shit.
What makes 80s horror stand out for you? Like, what's the differential between that horror and stuff that came out even in the mid 90s to today?
I think it would be the fact that it went right for the jugular. Um, it wasn't it wasn't quite as refined as horror is today. And I mean, I say that with horror today is better. Horror has gotten smarter. Um, there you see directors like what's that guy Jerome Peele and
Oh,
that Ari.
Jordan
Yeah,
Peele,
yeah,
Jordan Peele,
and
Ari Aster,
yeah,
what's the guy?
exactly.
I
Yeah,
forgot
they're
the
taking
English person name.
horror. Yeah, they're taking horror to higher levels. But I think what
Hmm.
I like about '80s horror is that it wasn't at that high level. It was pretty base, and it just basically is like we're going for the scares, we're going for the gore, we're going for the tits, and that's it. And we make no pretensions about it.
Hmm. Yeah, and you know what? Because like you've mentioned before, you're a little bit older than me. So during the 80s, I was still too young to really get into a lot of these movies. Or if I tried, they would just scare the shit out of me, and I just wouldn't watch because I was born in 81, so I pretty much go year by year as the calendar year, or same age as the calendar year. So, when I was 8 or 9, I wasn't watching Freddy Krueger movies because they would just scare the shit out of me. They scared. Can you believe I actually watched all these Nightmare on Elm Street movies for the first time? I think 4 or 5 years ago, just because of how scared I still was of Freddy Krueger, and it
Wow.
still gave me nightmares, man. Freddy Krueger is just a visceral fucking character. I mean,
It's
uh,
a visceral concept. It's the
yeah,
concept that's visceral.
the
Yeah.
whole concept is visceral, but he's a visceral character, man. Because, I mean, the first movie is just really fucking like it's hardcore. I mean, afterwards he becomes sort of a comedic type character, and you can kind of
Right.
handle it a little bit more. But the one that left the biggest impression on me and kind of kept my eyes open at night was the first one, and then Wes Craven's A New Nightmare, which he
Yeah,
did.
that one. Yeah, that one I actually hated when I first saw it, and when I rewatched it, I was like, "Oh, I get it." And I think part of that was I watched the Nightmare on Elm Street documentary,
Hmm.
where Wes Craven explained exactly what his idea was behind that, and it was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I get it." And yeah, I enjoyed it a lot more the second time.
Yeah, the end kind of gets schlocky, but the build up to the end is really, really good. And I felt it was almost like a prototype for what Scream became after, because it's very
Right, right.
self-aware movie. So it was like his first attempt. But man, and I saw that documentary too. I think it's called "You'll Never Sleep Again." I think something like that. I forgot the
Something
name,
like
but it's a
that.
really
Yeah.
long ass documentary about all.
Yeah, it took me 3
What's it
days
called?
to watch. Oh no, did I get booted?
No, no, you're not booted.
No, no, I don't. Okay, yeah, I don't remember the name of it, but it was something like that. But it took like 3 days for me to watch.
Yeah, no, it took me a couple days too, but it was really good. But then it was like I had way too much Freddy in my life, and then you start closing your eyes and you hear this this voice. But I agree with you. What I like about the when I got a little bit older, and then actually a lot older because I've only started to really get into horror more after joining the Talking Films, and there's a lot of horror guys on there because kind of I never hated on horror. Like some people are like real film snobs and they're like, oh, horror. It's like no, I never hated on it. It's just not a genre that I watched frequently. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre being an exception. Like that's probably in my top 10 movies of all time. I saw that when I was like 19, 20. But for whatever reason, it was just never a genre that I just had to go back to and watch more and more and more. You know, I probably saw Chucky when I was a kid and um, a few of the more famous movies. So it's really cool for me to get to see a documentary like this because it gets me to appreciate the medium more and what these guys were
Right.
going for with that visceral aspect that you talked about, which you can say it's not sophisticated, but at the same time, I mean, it's dealing with base emotions, and those are the realest emotions. So in a way, I, I I get this new wave of horror that tries to be very psychological and very slow burn. Everybody likes to use that term. It's a slow burn. I'm like, well, maybe it's just masturbatory. Like, just get to the point. Like, like what I appreciate about these movies is, yeah, there's a scary dude that might rape or kill you that lives, just down the street. That's a reality. That's something that everybody has feared at some point. Some even not just as women, but even as men when we're little kids. I think you even told a story once in your Facebook about how this guy called you over to his car or something, or was it your sister or something? You
No, it was
know?
my dad. It was my dad.
Oh, it was your dad. Some guy tried to kidnap him when he was a
Yeah,
little boy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So even I mean, it's these base things that are scary sometimes. And we living in São Paulo, especially. I mean, if we can go out if we leave the house after a certain hour. It could be the last time we leave the
Yeah.
house. Sometimes, so I I'm getting more and more into these movies, and I'm getting I'm going through them slowly. I'm going through the more popular ones, even like the crappy popular ones like Leprechaun.
That I've
But
never seen.
oh, Leprechaun is funny. The first one is actually not that bad, but then it gets kind of ridiculous. But there's a few that I've never seen, like Hellraiser used to scare the shit out of me. I was a latchkey kid. My
Yeah, the
parent,
first Hellraiser is actually a really good movie.
yeah, but I just don't. I mean, I remember watching parts of it as a kid and just having to turn it off. So I've just never gone back to rewatch it because it used to just scare the shit out of me. But mainly because, my parents would leave for work in the morning, get home at night, and I would be by myself, and I don't need to see Pinhead, on my TV screen, talking about the demons of hell. So, um, but it's giving me a newer appreciation, and also I like the tongue-in-cheek aspect of a lot of these movies. That's something that is
They're
really,
they're
really cool.
self-aware mostly.
Extremely. And so there's a lot of classics I've never seen. Like I haven't seen any of the Evil Dead ones. They talked about the Evil Dead series on
Yeah.
the I've seen Killer Clowns from Outer Space. I've seen like these weird ones. I've seen some Trauma. I like that company. Is it Trauma Films?
Trauma were
Yeah.
great. Yeah,
Have you ever
Monster in the
seen?
Closet. Monster in the
Have you,
Closet is brilliant.
Pete? Have you ever seen the movie about the killer condoms?
Oh no.
Oh, I gotta send you that. I did this really long write up on it in the Talking Films group. A I'll send you that. That's on YouTube. That's a great fucking movie. And it makes absolutely no sense. It's insane, but it's like I don't know. I don't get it. It's like this the guys. I think it's in German, but the guy's Italian, but they're in New York. It's like really wacky. It's a really wacky movie, man. And there's these condoms that are like killing people. There's these like, and then you find out why at the end.
What,
It's
do they
it's
have teeth or something?
yeah, they have real teeth. It's real weird.
Oh man.
Yeah. Killer Condoms. Let me see here. Movie. It's called Killer Condom. Yeah, it's
Well,
a lecherous college professor takes a student to a sleazy New York motel and becomes the first victim of a sharp-toothed murderous condom. Assigned to the is Luigi Macaroni, a gay cop, visits the motel, picks up a young hustler, Billy, and takes him to a room where they da da da. But it's like I don't know. It's like a really crazy movie, but it's really funny. Um, um, but yeah, I thought it was a trauma movie. Maybe it's not. I'm looking here because here it says Ascot Movies. The plot takes place in New York and in the present in a hotel called Quickie. A professor blackmails a student into his. Oh no, that's a different movie, Killer Condom. But anyway, I'll send it to you.
all right.
I'll send it to you, and I think you'll really, really love this movie. But it's really out there.
Okay.
Uh, mm, yeah, it's really wacky. So I like that, and I also dig the werewolf movies of the 80s. I tend to be a little bit better than the newer ones. I dig a lot of those werewolf movies. Now, this is a 4.5 hour documentary, guys. So at the beginning, I wasn't getting too much into it because it plays out like just like a calendar year. They'll do like 1980, and then they'll pick like three movies from the 1980s. They'll talk about it, and then they'll have like a little section about female protagonists in horror, and then they'll have like a little 5 minute section in 1982, and then they'll show like four or five movies. And I thought the presentation was kind of boring to do that, but after a while, you kind of get into it, and it becomes almost like an old school like MTV countdown, you know.
Right.
Uh, and it does have that 80s feel to it, and MTV was definitely huge around that time. So, and they mention MTV a lot in this documentary. So after a while, you just get into it, and you're like 1984, 1980, and then you're waiting for your favorite movie from 1986 to eventually show up. And they talk to a lot of really good directors and actors, Carpenter's in there. The chick that plays Elvira, I forgot her name. She's in there.
Her name
Everybody.
is Elvira.
No, but the actress is a different. I think she's got a different name. The actress. Forgot her name. Actress who plays Elvira. Let me see. It's Cassandra Peterson. That's her name.
Right, right.
It's really damn good. But she's in there. They actually talk about her movie. I love her movie, Elvira's Queen of the Whatever. That was a really fun movie I used to watch when I was a kid. The only guy that seems out of place is the dude from Slipknot. He gets questioned a lot for whatever reason, but aside,
Okay.
yeah, I don't get
I
why.
love Slipknot, but I don't really understand what relevance he has here.
And what's your dude from Halloween 3? Um,
Tom Skerritt?
yeah,
No,
he's in
not Tom Skerritt. No, it's not Tom
Tom
Skerritt.
Atkins.
Tom Skerritt
Tom,
was from Alien.
Tom Atkins.
That's
He's
it. That's it. Yeah.
in there a lot. In a bunch of classic movies.
Yeah, he's gotten a huge cult following from that because a lot of people believe that Halloween 3 was like the best Halloween sequel, which I don't agree with, but okay, if it's helping people, then no problem.
I dug it, but I don't think it's the best sequel. But if you look at it as a standalone movie, it's not too bad.
Yeah.
And oh, again, if you're a fan of 80s horror, you'll definitely dig it. But even if you're not a mega fan like myself, it's cool to get into just these people's psychology and why they're making these movies. They talk about Christine and Cujo. There's a whole lot of Stephen King in this.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
what's that movie he did that was just everybody was just coked out of their minds?
Maximum Overdrive.
Actually, I think the section on Maximum Overdrive is like, just imagine a movie made entirely with cocaine.
Yeah.
And they have this.
I think he made that around the same time he wrote It, which actually explains why there are certain aspects. I mean, it's a great book, but there are certain aspects of it. It's like, dude, and you know the aspects I'm talking
I
about because
know.
last time yeah,
There's definitely stuff in there that will never make it into any movie adaptation, unless it's like some
yeah,
German or Nordic version of the movie where they don't give a shit. But yeah, definitely not
yeah. And
palatable.
apparently Stephen King was called on that, and he was like, "Man, I was just on so much drugs, I got carried away."
Yes, yes. And for those that don't know, there's sex involving minors in the book. Very graphic sex involving minors.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Group sex.
yeah, and just think about it. There's only one girl in the losers, so
yeah,
and none of them have homosexual sex. So that kind of breaks it down.
yeah.
Although, oh, I don't want to get no. Anyway, I don't want to get into that. But very weird, very weird. But it's not the end of the book. But I'll tell you what, it's a better. The book has a better ending than both of the live action adaptations
I didn't
because
even watch the second one.
it just it bored me a little bit. It's overly long, overly long,
Yeah,
because it's all about the fight in their mind. You know, in the book, not just the book, but books in general. You have that luxury of being able to write pages and pages and pages of exposition about what's going on inside somebody's mind, and therefore in the book, it's just the climax just feels like a real climax. It feels like
right,
something, and you can't really translate that to the screen. It doesn't work. I don't know. Two times they've tried to make a good ending to it, and I love the first part. I thought the first part ones were good, but the adult stories just don't really flow that well on screen because you can't get into their heads. They have to actually
right,
say what they're feeling, and it is not about that. It is about just what's what's traumatizing them from inside. So the second movie definitely wasn't as good as the first one. Definitely wasn't as good. But getting back to this, man, what highly recommend it. You love it. I know you'll like this a
yeah.
lot.
I will check it out for sure.
And it's actually a quick watch. I was surprised. I was able to watch it in one sitting. It's 4.5 hours, but it kind of no,
Wow.
actually, I watched it in two. I'm sorry, because I had to teach class early the next day, so I stopped it at the 2 hour mark. But if I didn't have to teach a class, I would have watched it all in one sitting. It really once it starts going, you just kind of ride with it. Oh, and I love their section talking about the women, because that's where we get the final girl, this whole idea of like the female
Exactly.
protagonist.
Yeah.
And because I've read articles, I mean, this is a long time ago where, a lot of feminists are really upset with horror because it's so gratuitous nudity and this and that. And I like that they didn't shy away from that, where some of the actresses that have been in a lot of these movies said, yeah, there is this kind of weird line where, yeah, we're gonna show tits and ass because we know boys want to watch that. So it is
Exactly.
kind of,
Yeah.
so there is that side that's very exploitative, but at the on the other side is these female characters were badass. And one lady said something so cool. I'm saying lady, but apparently in the horror world, you'll probably know who they are. I don't know who they are, but they're pretty famous. They were in a bunch of movies. But she was like, you know, horror was the only genre where I could be a badass and kick ass because they weren't making a lot of action movies with female leads. I mean,
No. No.
you just watched an exception with Aliens, but there
Right.
really weren't that many tough, hardcore who could also be very feminine and just not like a man, just which happens to have tits and ass because some guys don't know how to write women, and that's what they think. If you're gonna be a female superhero, you're basically like a dude with a vagina.
Right.
And it's no, you can still be very feminine, very sexy, and still kick somebody's butt. So that was kind of cool to see that the women talking about their experiences in horror film, where they even had to struggle a little bit about doing nudity and whether if it went too far.
Most of the big ones didn't, though. If
Hmm?
I recall correctly, like Heather Langenkamp from
She never
Nightmare
did.
on Elm Street,
Hmm.
um, I don't think she was ever nude. There was the scene where she gets pulled in the bathtub, but I believe they used a body double for that. And Jamie Lee Curtis never did. And she was the horror queen, man. She was in like
Yeah,
5, 6 straight horror movies in a row, and she
yeah.
never had to take off her clothes. Like she just sold it.
Yeah, it's when you get to the lower budget ones where they just gotta fill butts that I guess you gotta see some
Right.
butts. Although Tony, well not Tony, what's his name? I forgot his name already. Tom Atkins. He said, "Hey, you saw my butt once. I think in Halloween." He was like, "Back when I had a butt, you saw my butt."
I
But
don't remember that.
yeah, you don't want to remember it. But anyhow, so yeah, I was happy with this. I definitely dug it. And bring back more practical effects, please. Because I don't know. That's a debate we have a lot in the film groups, practical effects versus special, the
CGI, yeah.
and even though I mean it's so clear that okay, that's a Yoda puppet or whatever, or that's or even if you compare the Thing, which isn't a movie I'm a huge fan of, but you look at the effects from the original versus the remake, and there's something or well, it's organic, it's real, it's in camera. So even though it's you still like your brain says, okay, it's a puppet, but there's something about it that just makes it last longer.
Right.
Unless the CGI is like Steven Spielberg level Jurassic Park, which I still don't know how those dinosaurs still hold up today from 1992, but they still do. But he mixed animatronics with CGI, so that's probably the magic formula. But yeah, there's something special about practical effects, man. It just makes it feel real, and because it's something that it's like you can actually touch it. It's there. It's all the effects were done on screen, not in post production, post editing, post this. So I don't know. I'm a big fan of practical versus the CGI fest. We shall see. I'm curious as to whether Jordan Peele is going to bring back that 80s. Well, Candyman was in the 90s, but it still had that kind of a slasher feel to it. I wonder if he's going to bring that to his remake and not try to make it too cerebral. One wonders. Because it'd be nice. I'd like for horror to get back into that a little bit. Bring us back just some gore and some kills on a bit on
Oh,
a
the back to the
mainstream level.
video store, I think, is what it is. I mean, like almost nobody. I mean, I used to go see horror movies in the cinema, but usually only franchises like Nightmare on Elm Street movies, Friday the 13th movies. I go see them in the cinemas, but pretty much everything else, I waited to come out on video or come out on pay TV. And yeah, I kind of like that vibe. It's like, okay, like I didn't go see it in the cinema, but now I'm gonna kick back in my home and watch this, and it's actually a lot scarier when you watch it at home. Actually,
I
you're all alone. It's a little creepy.
Yeah, that's how I felt watching those nightmare movies. It was just like, I don't need to be watching this bullshit. Yeah, but it was good. I couldn't stop watching it. So I'm glad they turned them kind of comedic at the end because it made me feel better about my life, chances of surviving. But anyway, that's enough on that, man. But definitely check it out. This is really well made. And just to give props here to the folks behind it, this was In Search of Darkness was directed by David A. Weiner, who but we got John Carpenter, we got Greg Nicotero's on there, who's a real cool guy from Walking Dead, but he started way back in the day. Joe Dante, who
Nice.
directed Gremlins, right? He did Gremlins or
Yeah.
no? Yeah,
Yeah.
Gremlins and also the werewolf movie. I'm not a huge fan of that one.
American Werewolf in London. Yeah.
No. He did the other one. That American Werewolf is Landis.
That's John Landis. That's John
Joe
Landis. Yes.
Dante did the Howling. The Howling, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That was full of sex.
Yeah, you got Barbara Simpson or Barbara Crampton, Williams, Keith David, Kane Hodder's in there, of course. Bill Moseley, which I don't know who that is. Sean S.
Bill
Cunningham.
Moseley's the dude from the Rob Zombie movies.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Okay. And then yeah, so it's got 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, 8 out of 10 on IMDb.
Nice,
Yes, but it's
nice.
definitely worth watching. So let's move ahead. Maybe we're gonna switch gears a little bit, and we got ourselves what seems like a drama.
Yeah, yeah. I will tell you, the alien makeup in this movie is very lacking. The special effects are not that good. The martial arts scenes are not that great. But it is still a pretty good story because it turned me on to something that I've never heard of before, which I will probably find useful in the future. And that is the end of the tour. So, this movie is based on a book by a writer I believe is named David Lipsky, and he was working for Rolling Stone. And like I said before we started the broadcast, have you ever heard of this writer? Because I haven't.
No.
Uh, yeah, yeah. The writer is not David Lipsky. It's David Foster Wallace. Apparently, in the early '90s, he was considered like the second Hemingway,
Mm.
um, like these once in a generation type writers. So the Lipsky character, who is played by that motherfucker from the Facebook movie,
Yes.
Eisenberg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he demands. He's working at Rolling Stone, and he
Also known
demands.
as Lex Luthor.
Oh yes, yes. Unfortunately, um, yeah, I know you love that movie, but fuck, you'll never make me love it.
No, but
Anyways,
he wasn't
that
that great. Continue.
that's another subject.
Yes.
Anyways, he convinces his editor, like he says, like Rolling Stone has never done an interview with a writer. Why not? And his editor says, well, we don't interview writers. We're like a music and popular culture magazine. And he's like, but this is like a once in a generation writer. This guy is like Hemingway and Vonnegut all rolled into one. And his editor gives into him and he's like, all right, you can do it. So what he does is he sends him on an assignment to follow him on the end of his book tour. That's where the title comes from, the end of the tour.
Mm.
But the end of the tour is a joke because he meets him at his home in Bloomington, and then they fly to Minneapolis, which I seriously think it would probably be faster to drive to Minneapolis from Bloomington. I mean, they can't be that far apart. So they go there, and he does a speaking engagement at a bookstore. And the next day, he does a radio interview. And that's it. That's the end of the movie. So, what is so interesting about this movie? Because that's a boring fucking story. What's interesting about it is it revolves around the relationship that they develop in the process of this. Um, First of all, Wallace is a really fucked up guy. We know this from the beginning because the movie starts with Lipsky being informed that he has killed himself. This is 12 years after they initially met. So it's not a spoiler. You find out in the first 5 minutes this guy committed suicide. And over the course of the movie, we discover he has some pretty severe issues. He's a television addict. This book he wrote is 1,030 pages.
Hmm.
And it's basically a commentary on the human condition. And it seems to be, because I haven't read it, and I don't know if I will, because 1,030 pages is really long, but it seems to be about his addiction to television and him saying that, like, when we let ourselves get distracted by the trivial, we lose touch with what's important. And he's very lonely. And this relationship breaks down to where, okay, the Lipsky's supposed to be the journalist, Wallace is supposed to be the subject, but that relationship breaks down to the point where they start forming a friendship, which completely complicates the professional relationship. Um, I know it may not sound very intriguing, but if you like movies that are driven by characters and dialogue and acting, it's brilliant. I mean, I've never heard of these people before, but I found the story really compelling.
It's not a movie about writing though, is it? Or is it more about the guy's life?
It's not a movie about writing, it's a movie about writers and the
Okay.
psychology that motivates them. Because there is this
Okay.
dynamic where the relationship kind of falls apart for a while. And part of it is in what's his face's state, our book writer. What is his name? Wallace. He's telling. There's a beautiful scene where they're at the Mall of America, and we get his backstory. He says, like, basically, like, he wrote two novels in his early 20s that were very critically acclaimed, but they failed commercially. And he fell into this depression. He started drinking. He was put on suicide watch. He was institutionalized. And when he got out of the institution, he was like, well, who the fuck cares about it anyway? You know, like, anything that sells a lot of copies is
Mhm.
obviously garbage anyway. And then he gets this huge hit that everyone loves. And he's telling Lipsky, like, look, like, when you have that defense mechanism and you become a success, that defense mechanism totally backfires on you and you feel like a fraud and your defense mechanism doesn't work on you anymore.
Mm.
At the same time, Lipsky is jealous of this guy. He's super jealous of him because he has had a novel and a collection published. And in his own words, I'm writing 500 word fluff pieces on boy bands. So he feels like he's just a hack writer. And this guy that he's interviewing has all the talent he wants. He has all the success he wants. And he's resentful of it. It's pretty clear. Like, they're developing this friendship, but on his level, there's resentment on both
Almost
sides.
like Amadeus.
Yes, yes, yes. Professional jealousy. Exactly.
Hmm. I can dig that. I can get into that. I asked you that question because I never could get into movies about writing for whatever reason. And you know that I like to write a lot. And my older brother, especially, would always recommend these movies about writing. And I'm like, oh, it just would piss me off. But I like movies about writers, about just the psychology of people that are creative. That's way more interesting, not necessarily about how it is that they created what it is that they created. So that seems like an interesting movie. I would dig that. I'd probably try to see if I can sneak it in this week. I could get into that. Is it a long movie?
It's average. It's about like an
Okay,
hour, 45 minutes.
I can dig that. I could dig
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah. And this guy, Jason Segel, the guy who plays Wallace, he's really good. Like
yeah, I've heard his name
he
before. What else
feels
has he been in?
sincere. I have no fucking idea. I'm
Yeah,
sure I've
definitely.
seen him before because he has one of these familiar faces.
Yeah.
But
Let me see. I'm looking. Oh, the Muppets.
okay, yeah,
I
that
know.
wasn't the first thing to come to my mind. But
No, but
okay,
that's probably where I remember. No, that's definitely where I remember him from. Yeah, he was in the Muppets, and he was really good in it. He was funny in the reboot, like the last one. But the other movies I'm looking here, I don't see anything. Our Friend, Comes Sunday, The Discovery, the end of the tour. We're talking about 2015. Sex Tape. This is the end. This is 40. The 5-year engagement. I
oh,
don't know.
was he in This Is the End? This Is the End is an amazing movie.
Oh, I'm
I
confusing. Okay, this is the end. Yes, he played himself.
Yeah, yeah, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. But I'd never heard of him, so it didn't
Forgetting
resonate.
Sarah Marshall. I've heard of that movie, but I've never seen it. Oh, he was in Tenacious D in The Pick of Destiny. He was a frat boy.
Okay.
But he was in Slackers in 2002, which is a movie that I actually kind of like. Isn't that the one that just like the camera just follows? Um, oh no, that's a different movie. What's that movie? You probably know this film where the camera just kind of follows different characters one after the other. Like they don't really tie into.
That
Not the name of
sounds
the.
familiar, but I think it's also like 20 years ago, and I don't know. I've
Yeah,
had way too
no,
many concussions, so
yeah, I used to like this movie. It used to be on back when Bravo or used to actually show movies.
right.
You know, these are actually good independent movies. And there was this movie, but I forgot what it's called. It's not Slackers. It's some other name. I'll find out at some point. It was a kind of a cool movie, but it would be like, the camera would follow these 20-some-year-olds, and it would just like focus on like this couple sitting in a cafe having a conversation about nothing, and
Right.
then he would leave out the door, and then the camera would pan to this other guy walking past him, and it would follow him, and he's going to meet some
Oh,
friend, and they would talk about some bullshit, and then he would leave. Maybe he'd get on the elevator, and then the camera would follow somebody coming out of the elevator, and it would just like, it was just the day in the life type. Um,
right, right.
the 20 somethings of that generation X. But it was really well done. I mean, some people kind of found it a little pretentious, but I thought it was a really cool
Yeah,
movie.
well,
But
that concept was so hip back in the day. It's like,
you know what
oh,
it
we're
was
taking.
though?
Okay.
You know what it was though? I think this was like the first movie that did it. Um, so I don't know if yeah, it's called Slacker. See, I was right. It's Slacker. The other movie's called
Oh,
Slacker.
that's Dinkletter, isn't it? The guy who did Dazed and
Yes,
Confused.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
1990 American independent comedy drama, written, produced, and directed by Richard Linklater, who appears in the film.
Linkletter. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
not Dinkletter.
yeah, but yeah, follows a single day in the life of an ensemble of mostly under 30 bohemians and misfits in Austin, Texas. The film follows various characters and scenes, never staying with one character or conversation for more than a few minutes before picking up someone else in the scene and following them. So I was right. Memory's not that bad. Slackers with an S. It's Slacker, singular. But yeah, it was 1990, so it was before that actually became cool to do.
Right.
It was before even Pulp Fiction, where bullshit conversation about
Yeah.
nothing was something
Right.
that people thought was so hip and cool. So this was it actually grossed a lot of money. It grossed $1 million on a 23,000 budget, so it was kind of a big independent
Wow.
hit. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah. Impressive.
and now we're getting. Speaking of money, we're getting to the showstopper here. Miss Beyonce, the Queen Bee. Are you a big
Oh,
fan,
I've
T?
been waiting to hear this. Yes. What is the source of the hate? Why? I mean, I don't. I don't like pop music, so I'm not a Beyonce fan at all. It's not anything against Beyonce. I don't like pop music in general. But she's getting a lot of hate for this. What? Why?
Well, I don't think she's getting a lot of hate. I think it's like with almost anything where you have the detractors, it's like it'll be just a loud voice and it'll be loud enough where it seems like it's a whole lot of people, but it's really not, you know? Um, I think it's mostly getting a lot of rave reviews and positive reviews, this movie that she made. So the thing is this with Beyonce, with this movie, apparently it's like, because you know she was in The Lion King, the live action version. She played Nala, and then off of this role, she made an album, I think, called The Gift, which she kind of played around with the songs and da 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 da. And then, but at the same time, she made this basically she calls it like a video album or an visual album, where instead of releasing a 12-song album, she released like almost like a 1.5 hour long video with the songs that would have been on the album. So it's a kind of a cool idea, kind of different. Um, and I think she did that before, like a similar version of it with an earlier album with Jay-Z. But anyway, um, and so what's the hate? I'll tell you what the hate is first, and then I'll tell you what I thought about it. So where she's getting a little bit of hate, and I can kind of get it. I don't necessarily agree with it 100%, but I get it. Is that Beyonce, especially of late, she's done a few things artistically where some people feel like she's just profiting off of whatever seems to be hip. Like I think like it started back during the Super Bowl performance where she did like some Black Lives Matter militant kind of stuff. She dressed like a Black Panther. That's what it was. She dressed like a Black Panther. And people were like, well, where's this coming from? Because this is the same lady. She was the same woman singing all the single ladies. And now all of a sudden, like almost 10, 15 years into her career, she all of a sudden wants to become like, as they say, woke, which is one of my least
Yeah,
favorite terms. So where's
yeah.
this coming from? And I'll tell you personally, I never bought into it. I never really felt like it was coming from a place of actual like Beyonce's not somebody that I ever saw actually talk about these issues. Like I can understand like okay Stevie Wonder or even a Michael Jackson, which he like that was from the start of their career all the way to the end. They spoke out about injustice. They James Brown even they that was part of their persona, their popular persona. They could do songs about, hey, let's just dance on the dance floor, but they also had, man in the mirror or whatever, or uh,
Right.
so when Michael Jackson's doing something like that, or even I mean the '80s was full of acts that did that stuff like that. It felt a little bit more, even like Prince had a lot of songs that were more political and socially conscious. But it's like you saw that it was like from the gate, they already came out doing something like this. So I think that's where people are like, where's Beyonce coming from? And it seems like she does it in the videos, but she's not out there all the time, like talking about it,
Oh, of course not. Of course not.
you know?
But the thing that cracks me up though is that most of what the hate I'm hearing coming from is people saying like, well, fuck her, she's not even really black.
Oh,
And
that's
of
crazy.
course,
That's conspiracy shit. Like the dude saying she's Italian.
yeah.
No, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. Like I don't know what that's about. No, she's definitely
Yeah,
a
it's
black
like
woman. No, but
you
let's
can
get
accuse her of being a sellout, but I mean like that's going a little bit
the
too
thing is
far.
this. Like, look, I'll try to break it down the best I can because I'm not an expert on these matters. But from what I get is this: is that there are people out there that are seriously on the forefront of like They're out there protesting. They're out there writing books. They're out there giving lectures. They're out there actually talking about what is really going on with systematic racism
Yeah.
and and what's really going on in Africa and all the countries of Africa, which I believe are like 54 countries in Africa. It's a lot of cultures. Let me just make sure here because I'll have my own haters if I don't know
They're
how many.
not all black though. They're not all black.
They're not. So yeah, 54 countries in Africa, and so um, they're like, okay, then all of a sudden Beyonce, who we haven't seen in a year or however long, can come out with this beautiful. I mean, visually, man. I mean, I know you're not into the pop music, but like visually, you
Right.
get some images that are fucking incredible. In this, I mean, I was
She is
entertained by
pretty
that.
hot too. I will
She's
say
very
that
hot.
about
Yeah,
Beyonce.
she was very hot,
Right.
and I liked like two or three of the songs I dug. I'm in uh, what do you call it? A little advisory. I'm not a Beyonce hater. She's not like somebody that I really like as an artist, but there's at least three of her songs that I can jam to. She's not the worst pop artist in the history of where we get like the Paula Abduls of the world or something, or the Tiffany's of the
Right.
world. I mean, there's
Yeah,
way.
no, she's talented. She's talented.
No, she's
My
really
attitude towards Beyonce is that she's good at what she does. I just don't particularly care for what she does, but good for
yeah.
her.
So what the main criticism is like it started with that, and I'm kind of in that camp, and I think Craig, he it was funny because he posted that thing.
He's winning. He's being won over.
He's being won over, but I think he was kind of in my camp for a long time, which is we kind of see as just it's marketing. It's like, okay, Beyonce sees that it's kind of hot right now to be kind of political, so let's be kind
Right.
of political. Kind of reminiscent to me of Madonna and all. Like Madonna just does what is like hot at the moment. Like remember when she was like spiritual Kabbalah Madonna, peace to all man. But then the next album, she was back to slutty Madonna. It's like, okay,
Right.
and you appreciate Madonna. I can respect Madonna a little bit more for it because it's in your face. You know that that's what Madonna is about. She's about marketing that brand called Madonna, and God bless her for it. She's great at it, and she's whatever needs to be marketed as her name when it's necessary. Whereas Beyonce is trying to play both sides of marketing the Beyonce name, and just so happens that right now Black Lives Matter and all this stuff is popular, but also I need to sell records, right?
Right.
So so then you get this hour and a half long piece African artist, all the beauties of Africa and this, and you know who's most upset with her are actually people from Africa
Of
who
course.
are saying, hey, Africa's not like a monolith, I mean, Africa's not just people walking around in tribal clothing or this kind of Wakanda. There's a term they call it now, Wakandaization or something of Africa, where
Yeah.
it's like Afro-future, where everybody's like dressed in these real nice suits and these kind of wacky futuristic costumes and stuff. And it's like I get them only because, and I think this is where you can understand this because you've lived here in Brazil. And
Yes.
remember when we were outside of Brazil, what is marketed to us about Brazil? It's soccer and carnival. And you and I have been here long enough to know that Brazil is way more than soccer and carnival, especially
Yeah.
in Sao
Yeah. There's
Paulo.
murders. There's murders.
There's murders. There's a lot of psychopaths, in fact, especially in Sao Paulo. So and I know plenty of Brazilians who resent that. They really resent,
Yeah.
especially those that live here in Sao Paulo, because they're like, man, all they show is fucking Rio de Janeiro, Rio de Janeiro. Like, Brazil is much more than just beautiful beaches. I mean, there's actual culture here. There's great bands. I know
Yeah.
you like a lot of Brazilian rock bands. There's great
Right.
rock music. There's heavy metal music. There's food, and there's people that are serious. There's people that are silly. There's people that don't know how to samba. There's people that hate soccer. Like, our country is more than this, but at some point you got to say, but what sells? Of course, what sells is Snoop Dogg and Pharrell Williams in Rio singing "You're Beautiful, Don't You Know?" You know, it's a catchy pop tune. You get all these beautiful Brazilian women with these gorgeous butts, and that's what sells. But I get it. I get the criticism that's coming out of these folks in Africa that are saying, hey, Beyonce, one, she doesn't even tour in Africa, you know. And then all of a sudden now she just wants to do an hour and a half long, uh, kind of very self indulgent in a way piece of like where she's kind of she's trying to say, I'm getting back to my roots. And this is where we come from, in uplifting the Black African, and this is where we are. But actually, can try to sell our culture, like the reality of our culture, not just
Right.
what people or it's the kind of the Black Panther version of like Wakanda. You know, it's the Wakanda, and it's like, yeah, but
Right.
Africa is like a regular place. You know, it's got its good, it's got its
Yeah.
bad. A whole lot of
Dude, you got to take this shit to Wakaliwood, man. Wakaliwood is where it's at.
I know. Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, we should do an episode just on who killed, what's his name? Who killed
Captain
main character?
Alex. Captain
Captain
Alex.
Alex. Oh my God. Yes, those movies are so good.
Yeah.
Uganda Land.
And he turned up in Bad Black. He was like a minor character in Bad Black. And
I
then everyone's
know.
like,
And
look,
then
it's
they're
Captain
like,
Alex. He's
he's alive.
alive. No, no,
Wow.
he's dead. He's dead.
No, oh man. Oh no, we gotta do a Uganda Land uh what do you call it, episode, because those movies are too good.
Wakaliwood. Yeah. Yeah, they were
Uh,
great.
but anyhow, so that's where I get the criticism, where it's like, what is Beyonce trying to say? Well, I guess, I mean, it's an important message, but I wasn't like moved by it because I've seen it a million times before. I've seen, like, there's somebody called Grace Jones that existed way before, Beyonce, who also wore
Yes,
crazy outfits.
I'm
And
very aware of Grace Jones.
yeah, and she's
She
all
was in
about,
View to a Kill.
Grace Jones is fucking wacky as fuck, and I love every bit of her
Yeah, she's
wackiness.
nuts, man. Like, I would
Absolutely,
not fuck with that chick in a million years.
100% nuts. But so I've seen this already, like what Beyonce is kind of doing with this visually. I mean, even Michael Jackson with "They Don't Care About Us," or I mean, a lot of his videos that were like all about the unity of the world, and he would have, well, he had back, "We Are the World," and "Save Africa" and all this stuff.
Right,
So there's nothing that she did in this movie as far as the message that I felt was groundbreaking. I guess for a new generation, I guess it's important for them to hear because of everything's going on right now. If you're a young black girl or boy, to think about the fact that, hey, we do. I mean, our heritage comes from something great that is before slavery. We weren't
right,
just slaves, but hey, Africa had kingdoms. Africa has a rich culture. Africa has this and that and the third. But at the same time, I get the criticism where they're like, yeah, but Africa is not just the voodoo priest, and
right.
crazy outfits and uh, uh, leopard prints or whatever. But hey, man, that's what's palatable to the West. I mean, what can you do? One thing in that I thought was interesting, as I was watching this is because I mean, you and I both have friends that are from the other side of the pond, as they say, and it's funny when you hear them talk, especially about Americans. Well, always about Americans. Canadians get left out of these conversations because Americans are a little bit wackier. Um, but in America, we have this tendency to go hyphenated with everything. Like I'm Irish American, I'm Italian American, I'm German
Right, right,
American,
right.
and some folks will, oh, I'm Irish. Man, when's the last time you've been to Dublin, right? But they,
Yeah,
but they but they'll say that because they understand, yeah, but my forefathers came here from Ireland, but Irish people will laugh at you if you say that. And I never thought about that with the African continent, but I get this sense that I think a lot of Africans might feel that same way about Black Americans, where they're like, man, you have as little to do with Ghana in Nigeria as Sylvester Stallone, you know? I
yeah.
mean,
I'm sure that's true. I'm sure
So
that's true.
I think that's a little bit of the backlash too, where they're like, where they even, and this is all coming from Black folks in Africa saying using these words, where she's appropriating the culture and just kind of using it to sell the Beyonce product. And those were strong words. And I was like, fuck, and it's, usually it's the white liberals that are talking about appropriation,
Yeah,
not,
it always is. It always is.
not people from African nations. So I thought
So she
it's a
must have
conversation.
really gone wrong.
Yeah, but again, I don't think it's a majority. I think it's a vocal minority, but a vocal minority with a good point. I don't totally discredit how they feel from the other side of the world. Because imagine if, like, I don't know who's kind of Irish descent in the U.S. Bill O'Reilly. That's the first name that comes to mind. But imagine Bill O'Reilly makes this hour and a half long documentary where he's using, whatever, leprechauns and
Potato
rainbows, and,
famine.
you know, yeah. And it's like, I'm sure Irish people would be like, yo, I mean, one, what connection do you actually have to Ireland other than your last name? And
Right,
two, we're kind of beyond the Irish, I'm sorry, the leprechaun and fairies and whatever, the Ivory Spring soap commercials. Like, that's our culture is way deeper than that, it
right.
goes deeper than Enya. So I feel it. I get the criticism, and I kind of agree with it. That said, the movie's gorgeous to look at. I mean, towards the end, I
Yeah,
kind of got distracted a little bit because it was just going on for way too long. But she works with a lot of artists from the continent, which I thought was cool. I think that's how she gets her rep, where they actually where she can say, "Hey, I didn't just get all these black images and put them on, or African images and put them on the screen. I actually put a lot of the African artists on with me, and they sang. Actually, some of them had some of the better songs, better than hers, um,
right.
and a lot of great dancing, makeup. The fashion was crazy. I mean, it's it's something. You know what? I think you would like this, Pete, if you were really baked, like just get
I'll try
baked,
and make that happen.
drink some, and just put it on play. And visually, man, it just it was almost surreal. Like it goes through a whole lot of shit, and it kind of tells a story. Um, and it's a lot of beautiful women in there, so you can get into that. There's that aspect of it.
Keep my
Um,
Vaseline handy.
Yeah, so you might dig it. You might go Craig on us and be converted to the beehive.
You're all right. All right.
But that's basically the criticism, and I think it's valid. I think it's 100% valid. I'm still not 100% in the Beyonce as a revolutionary. uh,
No, no, it's kind of hard to
uh,
sell. hard
I think
sell.
it's very much. I mean, another thing that's a criticism is that, um, and this goes more into politics, is that a lot of the people that are more militant, they're they they're against the Jay-Z Beyonce version of militancy, which is more black money. You know what you talk about. You know,
Yeah, of
it's
course.
very
Which there's
capitalist.
nothing wrong with. There's nothing wrong with
I
that.
agree, but that's been a rift forever. It's why there's plenty of black folks that don't ride with Oprah. You know, they just think, well,
Yeah, she's a
uh,
billionaire. She's
she's
like
a
the rich.
billionaire.
I believe she is actually the richest black person of all time.
Yeah, and I think she became the first black billionaire. I'm not
Billionaire. Yeah,
mistaken.
she is
Yeah,
the first black billionaire. Yeah.
yeah, and there's black folks that don't ride with her simply because of that. Because Oprah, somebody that would the hard. She's talking mostly to women, a lot of housewives, which are mostly white women, and she has a black following, obviously, but they don't ride with her because of that. Because she saw her way into freedom as land. Actually, there's a funny interview with Oprah where they ask her, "What's the thing that you like most about your fame?" And she's like, "Just buying land. I just buy land and buy land and buy land." And I'm like, God bless her, because she knows
Yeah, no.
that's hers. Nobody can take that away from her. I mean, I mean, she doesn't have kids, but it'll go to somebody at some point. And Jay-Z and Beyonce are kind of not on that same level. And there's actually a song at the end of this. What I thought was most interesting, I wasn't that much into the music, but I like the lyrics in some of the songs where it really gets into their psychology. And the song that she does with Jay-Z is probably one of the better ones. And where they actually do talk about, like, we're building this kingdom. I'm the mom, he's the dad, and we understand that through our seed we're building an empire. And that's very much from a capitalist point of view of how do we have power, because we have wealth. And if you get
Yes.
a lot of the militants that are more left leaning, more socialist, they cry wolf at that. They're like, no, that's definitely not what we're about. We just want equality, just based on the fact that one day people are going to wake up and be nice to you. And I'm just like, keep waiting. It'll
Yeah.
happen someday. Don't hold
Yeah.
your breath.
Well, we can always dream. We can always dream.
Yeah, so basically that's it. That's what the criticism is. But I recommend it. I recommend. I even sent it to a few folks, the link to the movie, and I prefaced it by saying I'm not even a big Beyonce fan, but I thought this was well made from the art direction standpoint alone. What you take out of it politically and socially, that's another question. That's up to you. But the art direction alone was fucking gorgeous in this movie, man. It was like an hour and a half of just like eye candy.
Right, but it's still a product, though, right? It's
It's
still
still
like
what?
it's a product. It's selling Beyonce, basically.
It is. It's a hell of a product. It's 100% a product, and it's selling Disney. I mean, it's totally connected to the Lion.
Right.
There's
Right.
like lines in the movie. There's Mustafa, and
Oh,
there's
I
lines
gotta
when
see this now.
yeah, it's straight up lines from the movie when Mustafa's like, "When you look up at the stars, those are our ancestors." Like it's the line, it's some line from the Lion King, and there's a
That
line from
sounds
Scar.
fucking nuts, man.
Yeah, and there's Scar is in there. There's lines from Scar where, because it kind of follows. There's like a loose narrative where there's this little boy, and then he's got his dad and stuff, and then the little boy runs off, and then he joins a gang. He kind of falls into a slumber, and while he's sleeping, that's the scene you get here, this kind of where it's Jay-Z and Beyonce living this extremely luxurious life. So that's when he realizes he needs to be a king. So it kind of loosely follows the Lion King story, but basically saying, hey, You got to get real rich and real powerful, and then you can do whatever the fuck.
Mm, that kind of goes
Wait,
against the
you cut
liberal
out. Say
narrative,
that
doesn't
again.
it?
Say that again, because you cut out.
Yeah, yeah. I said that kind of goes against the liberal narrative, doesn't it?
It does. It does. So the 1 second here. The There you go. No Name is one. Rapper No Name claims Beyonce exploited African culture for Black is King. Um, No Name said in a tweet that Beyonce's ode to the film was an African aesthetic draped in capitalism due to the lavish outfits and environment. He says, "We love an African aesthetic draped in capitalism. Hope we remember that Black folks on the continent whose daily lives are impacted by U.S. imperialism. If we can uplift the imagery, I hope we can uplift those who will never be able to access it. Black liberation is a global struggle." So, um, but then Kelly Rowland, who used to be in Destiny's Child, says No Name really thinks Beyonce shouldn't. But yeah, Beyonce's in the entertainment industry. She's using her platform to entertain, and there's been plenty of Black artists who have used African imagery, way from Earth, Wind, and Fire to Stevie Wonder to
Bob Marley, man. Bob Marley fucking
Parliament.
milked that shit.
Yeah, in Parliament, Funkadelic, but they were like Afro future, Afro
Yes,
punkish.
yes.
You know, I think again, what differentiates them a little bit, even someone like Bob Marley, is that their songs from the gate. Well, not completely from the gate, because you can go to the old school Bob Marley and it's very pop music. But when they became who they became, as we know them as icons, is the music was um, aware, and there was an awareness to the music. There was a message in the music, and you felt it not just on stage but off stage. Because even Stevie Wonder, I mean, if you get his early songs, he was just another Motown, pop artist, and then I think he smoked his first blunt, and then you get Inner Visions and Songs in the
Right.
Key of Life, or even Marvin Gaye. He's got his very pop songs in his early career, and then you get What's Going On, but you get this sense it feels much more organic. Or even if you don't want to talk Black artists, even the Beatles. I mean, look at their first two albums or two or
Yes,
three albums. It's
yes, yes.
total pop music, and then they meet Bob Dylan, and then they take some LSD, and then they get all. But you felt it not just in the music, but
Yeah.
even in the personalities
It wasn't
outside the.
just that. It was that the Beatles actually formed their own record company. And once they formed their own record company, they're like, I mean, I love their pop songs. Their pop songs are great. But when they form their own record company, it's like now we can just do whatever fucking crazy shit we want.
And they did.
So
But the thing is that it felt like it wasn't just to sell the Beatles. Like you felt that John Lennon, really wrong or right, he believed that shit. You know,
right,
or George Harrison believed that shit. Um, so I think that's where they get a pass. Where I don't know if Beyonce's been able to do that. I don't think Beyonce's been able to actually um, show that, okay, she really believes that shit. When it comes to Black activism, maybe she does.
right.
I don't know. But
I think she thinks she believes it. I mean, it's hard to say because I haven't seen the movie like you did, but based on what I've been reading, it seems like she does believe it, but not with the level of sincerity that most people require.
Exactly, and especially when you go all the way back to the continent. I mean, it would be one thing if maybe she did a movie like that, but just focus on American blacks and the history of American blacks, which is extremely
Right.
rich. Harriet Tubman, on, there's a lot of black female heroes and black male heroes that she could have drawn from to get that same message across of you're not just a slave, you're not just a second class citizen, and all these things. But if you go all the way back to the continent, that's where I believe people in the continent are like, who the fuck are you?
Right.
It would be,
Yeah,
and
I'm making like 15 cents a day, and you're making like $1 million a day. But thanks for championing us. Appreciate the effort.
yeah, it would be like an American, Axl Rose with his kilt on, and he's but really taking it seriously, like the Scottish,
Yeah.
the Scots, and the people from Scotland would be like, "Who the fuck is this douche?" Like, "Who the fuck are you?"
Yeah.
So that's basically what it is. But it's worth the watch just for the visual element. And if you don't like the music, then mute it and put on some Pink Floyd or something and just bake out to the visuals, man, because the visuals are fucking incredible in this movie. Really, really wild stuff. Afro future. I don't know if you get into any of that stuff. It's not that popular in pop culture, although Black Panther kind of played with it a little bit. But there's this whole subgenre called Afro, like an Afro-futuristic, where they'll blend the costumes and style of kind of the what do you call it? Ancient Africa, I guess you could call it. Kind of tribal, but mix
Okay.
it with futuristic stuff. I mean, Wakanda is the perfect example because I don't know if you saw Black
Yeah.
Panther.
Sounds like
Basically,
Carnival, actually.
Carnival does a few things like that. And it's
I
kind of
did.
cool.
I went to a really cool African themed Blocko last carnival, which will be the last one we ever have, by the way. But
Hmm.
it was super fun. It was African themed. They had like African people playing the drums, and we were all dancing in a conga line and shit. I mean, that shit was fun.
No, it's cool, but the thing is the mixture of like you get that, but then you put in robots and shit. It's like when you watch Black Panther, they look like they're doing tribal rituals, but at the same time they got like the highest high tech technology. So it's
Yeah,
like this blending of past. It's almost like with what show did that really well was Batman the animated series, where you didn't know exactly what time they were in. You know, like
right.
what in the
Yeah,
50s or
yeah. It could have been the 40s or it could have been the 2040s.
yes, it was like this weird mixture of past and so that's a cool concept, and with the that it's a lot more in comic books and stuff. In movies, I think probably Black Panther was the first like kind of uh big mainstream movie that I can remember, at least. Probably some other folks know better, that had that type of aesthetic. And here she plays a little bit with it, just a little bit. But anyway, enough about Beyonce, the queen, Queen Bee. Let's get into this. This is a long podcast tonight, guys. We're just going off.
Yeah, we're rambling, but we started late. We started late.
We got La Casa de Papel. Also known as
Yes, La Casa de Papel. And you were here in Sao Paulo at the time that this came out on Netflix. I don't remember when the show actually started, but
2017.
no, I think in Spain it came out earlier. I think in Spain it came out in 2016, but it came out on Netflix in 2017, and we saw the banner ads everywhere. Like it was a hit in Brazil.
It was a huge hit here. And I'll give you a little backstory with it because I'm totally confused with the show, why it seems to be so popular now. Because when I saw that it was like popular here, Netflix was delaying how showing it. So when I found it, I had to find, like, I watched the first season, but then I had to find the other seasons. I actually watched it from like the actual Spanish channel. I found it with English subtitles.
Right.
I watched so the because the original money, like the original show was only like two
It was
seasons.
22 episodes. It was
Yeah,
22 episodes.
and then
And Netflix split it up into two seasons.
yeah, they milked it. They milked it, because they don't like long seasons on Netflix. So I binged it. I binged both seasons, but then I got confused and I had to look it up before the podcast. And apparently, where I finished is not the end of the show. So there's more, and that
No,
I
there's
didn't know
more.
that.
That they've done four seasons so far, and there is a
Yeah,
fifth one
and,
coming.
and the fifth one is coming. So, uh, without giving away too many spoilers, but apparently, like where I finished the show seemed like a natural ending where the heist ended. I'll just say that. I won't say if it ended well or
Right.
bad, or who died or didn't die, but the heist ends. And I figured that was kind of the end, but apparently the show continues on and follows some of these characters post heist. So now I'm interested in getting back into it. I think that would be the season four that.
Yeah, that was my thing because the reason I chose this was because I just finished the first season,
Mhm.
which is 13 episodes, last week, and I was thinking like, okay, the show is about a gang that commits crimes.
We
For
lost
anyone who
Pete
doesn't
for a
know, the
minute.
show is about the robbery of the Spanish National Mint,
Yeah.
which is pretty fucking impressive. And not only are they robbing it, but they're going in there not to actually take money out, but to print their own money.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually the architect's dream. He's like, we don't have to steal from anyone. We don't have to hurt anyone. We're just going to go in there, we're going to print our own money and walk
Mm.
out, which is brilliant. Um, but the thing is, I figured like this premise is only sustainable for one season. And the first season, I think, is 13 episodes.
It's
And we get,
15. 15. I'm looking here on the wiki. It had its original run of 15 episodes on Spanish network and Antenna 3 from 2nd of May 2017 through November 23rd.
yeah, the Netflix run is 13, though. Um,
Okay. Yeah, it says here that when Netflix acquired the global streaming rights and recut the series into 22 shorter episodes and released them worldwide. And then it beginning the first part, followed by a second part on April 2018. Anyway, well, they cut it up, and actually, that's one thing I like that I watched the original from Spain because the episodes are longer. Like the
right.
Netflix one, they kind of cut the episodes in half, but the Spanish one, it's like almost an hour each episode.
Yeah, I kind of like the way that they edited it though, because every ending was a cliffhanger. Like they cut it at the
Mhm.
perfect point. Like every time an episode ends, you're like, ah, oh my god, I gotta watch the next one. Like, ah,
Well, so I gotta watch season two. It begins 3 years after
but
the heist. All right, so I gotta watch the Netflix season two to catch up to where everybody else is. Because apparently I watched what would have been the Netflix season one, which is parts one and two of the original show.
right,
Yeah, look at that. All right, so see, I'm glad you brought this show up because I was feeling like such a little snob every time that I would say, well, you guys are late to the party because I've seen this whole series already, like back when it first came out.
yeah,
Now I see that there have been total new seasons. Okay, cool.
yeah, but it was this. I believe I don't know. Like, what's the last thing you remember? Because the ending of Netflix season one is when they find the house that they had been training at for 5 months, and all their
Oh,
DNA is all over the place,
yeah,
and
no,
their plans are on a fucking bulletin board, and the professor is in his girlfriend's cop car with his hand in his face, thinking,
I will
"Oh,
I will mention the name of a country, and you tell me if it rings a bell. The Philippines.
I am aware of the Philippines, yes."
No, but as it relates to the show,
As it relates to the
I don't
Philippines,
want to give away any
Manila.
spoilers. I don't want to give away any spoilers. Okay. Well, when I ended watching, when I finished watching, Philippines was a major part of the series. So that's why I thought it had come to its natural end, but apparently there's more post the Philippines.
Yeah, well, what I was thinking was that it was the story of the gang, and the robbery of the mint was just season one. But apparently, season one only covers about 3 days, actually. So you can get an entire other season out of the rest of that robbery. But then apparently they go on to do more. I don't know what it is, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, no, I
But
haven't seen it.
I
That's what I'm saying. Because where I ended, where I stopped watching, where the series quote unquote ended back in 2017, was with the Philippines. It was in the Philippines. And then I'm looking here,
Okay.
season two, parts three and four, 2019 to 20, begins 2 to 3 years after the heist of the Royal Mint of Spain. So
Nice.
that I have no clue about. So that's all new stuff to me. So I'm
Nice.
gonna have to get back into the show
Yeah,
because
because they're a cool crew. Like I like the dynamic between the characters. One thing I really like about this, and that I like about all series, I mean, I'm a big Dallas fan. JR is the original man you love to hate, but
yeah,
I always like shows where the protagonists are bad guys. I don't know why, but um, this is a classic example of that type of show. I mean, the professor. The professor is such a great character. He's Machiavellian. At the same time, he doesn't want to hurt anyone. He really doesn't want to kill anyone. He doesn't want to use violence. He doesn't even want to steal. That's why he's printing money. He's printing money because he wants to say, like, we're not stealing, we're just making our own money, which I think is
yeah,
a hilarious idea. But at the same time, he's still kind of a piece of shit. I mean, he
of course.
manipulates that he manipulates that poor police woman so badly.
Man, she's
I
so
mean,
hot. Oh my God, I had a crush on her. She's hot. She's sexy.
yeah, all the girls in that movie are hot. Are you kidding? They're Spanish.
Yeah, no, but she takes the cake for me. The cougar. She's
Right.
the cougar. The other one, all the young girls, they're cute too, but she just had like a real like Clarice Starling type, like a Scully vibe to
She's a
her.
bit she's a bit too old to be a Clarice Starling type, but yeah, she definitely had the hot police woman thing going.
Yeah, no, but imagine like uh Julianne, what was that, Julianne Moore who did
Julianne Moore, yeah, Julianne Moore, Clarice Starling, I could see that.
yeah, like Clarice like 10 years after, a little
Yeah.
like aged like a fine wine type Clarice Starling.
Yeah.
Well, she was
Yeah,
hot,
and she's
man.
so insecure. She's so insecure.
She was
She's an
secure.
abused woman.
Uh-huh.
Her husband beat on her, and she's filed a restraining order against him. And all the other cops hate her because of that, because her husband happens to be a cop. So she's like kind of ostracized from her police community, largely because of female issues. And Salva is like the only nice guy who comes along in her life. But he also just happens to be the guy that masterminded the robbery that is her job at the point.
Exactly. And this relationship, it is interesting. Again, I don't want to give you any spoilers, but just keep watching, and I think you'll really enjoy it. But yeah, I remember when I did watch this, I ran through the first season probably in a day or whatever it was called, the first part. I think in Spanish it was part one and part two. Ran through it, and then I ran through the second one. I thought it was really well made, and I thought it was one of those that had a natural ending. So I'm curious to see if it's any good, whatever they Netflix produced after, because I don't know, some shows, man, they really they ended well. They don't need. We talked a little bit about this last week with Train to Busan. Like you don't really need a
Right.
sequel. And it reminded me of a show that I thought was really cool in the concept. I mean, it wasn't high art, but it was just a cool show. Was Prison Break. And the first season of Prison Break is fucking awesome, you know, because it just these inner workings of how the fuck they're gonna get out of this prison in one season. And then after they get out of prison, there's really no need for a season two, but they did like another 4 or 5 seasons afterwards, and they weren't as good because, well, they weren't out of. It was like it wasn't a prison break anymore. It was a prison don't go back.
Right.
You know.
Yeah,
And
13 Reasons Why was like that. 13 Reasons Why was an adaptation of a book, which I
yeah,
haven't read, but I mean to. And it was heartbreaking. It was a beautiful fucking season. And then it became such a hit. They're like, well, we're going to do more and we're going to do more. And like after that, it just completely fucking ruined it. Like you didn't
yeah,
need
like
more.
another. Oh, the 13 reasons we forgot to mention. You know, or
Yeah,
the
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
another
They should call it 13 More Reasons.
Yeah, 13 more reasons. I mean, something like that could work. Like, even with something like Prison Break, it would have been cool if they made it like an anthology thing. Like, or like, I've never seen this show, but I think it works like that. The American Horror Story or something, where
Right,
every
right.
season is just a completely different cast, a completely different story. And the show manages to work that way. I think with stuff like that, Prison Break, cool concept. I mean, it's a very pop show, not highfalutin or anything, but it worked. And then season two could have been Prison Break, but now out of a different prison or with a different set of
Right.
people.
Yeah,
And
I
maybe with
agree.
13 Reasons Why, it might have worked that way too. So I'm curious now because I'm like, it's like the money heist is really cool, but do I really want to know what these characters are doing post heist? I don't know, but I'll check it out. I'll see if it's any good. Um, and one thing that I wanted to mention about this show is that a few weeks, I think you weren't on this podcast. It was when I first started doing them on Mondays. I was talking Spike Lee movies, and I had seen Inside Man for the first time in a long time,
Ah,
and I
yeah,
didn't
that's a good
realize how
one.
much La Casa de Papel really ripped off that movie and some of the concepts, you know? Oh,
Yeah, yeah, there's similarities for sure.
yeah, just the whole idea of like everybody dressing the same dress, the victims the same as the robbers, so that the cops can't shoot. We're going in here, but it's for a good cause. We're not gonna hurt anybody. The whole like there was a lot of the elements from Inside Man that when I watched La Casa de Papel for the first time, I thought, "Ooh, this is pretty original." But then Inside Man had like escaped my memory, and then I rewatched. And I was like, "Oh shit!" They're basically getting the base concept, but then of course La Casa de Papel is very very wild, and it just goes
And
on.
the characters are off the charts. I
Yes.
mean, the characters in this movie are insane. Like, you have the professor who is like, the mastermind. And what I really like about it is that, like, everything that can possibly go wrong does.
Goes on.
The professor is such a genius. He's planned everything, he's made all these rules, but unfortunately, his crew are a bunch of undisciplined little shits. And they break every rule he sets. And so, of course, the plan completely falls apart.
Yeah.
But
Oh, there's some tense moments.
yeah, he has anticipated this, and he is still trying to stay one step ahead of his own fucked up crew, which is one of the
Yeah.
things I really like about it. It's like, you know, he's constantly doing damage control. He's there at his computer, and he's like, okay, I knew this was going to happen. I allowed for this contingency, but fuck, now I have to do it.
Yeah. No, it's a cool show. Really well made. And do you watch it in Spanish or do you got the English dubbed?
No, I watch it in Spanish. That's actually why I didn't watch the season two premiere last night. I started and it was like, man, I'm too drunk. The subtitles are moving too fast.
Yeah.
Gonna save it for tonight, maybe.
All right. And to finish our little podcast, I just want to mention an old classic that people should watch that it held up really well, man, because I saw this movie and read the play because it was in high school, you know, because it's like required reading. So we definitely got into the Crucible. But I remember watching it in high school, not being like that impressed by it because who's impressed by anything in high school, right? And you know, I only remembered like a few key scenes, like this one. I've given you my soul, leave me my name. Uh, it's and so I'm teaching this kid U.S. history, and we're right in this era of the Puritans and the Pilgrims and everything. So yeah, I'll get him to watch this movie and see what he thinks of it because it is a classic story. So just want to give a little bit of love to the Crucible because it held up better than I remembered. I mean, it's
That's a
very
great
hammy.
movie. It's a great
It is.
movie.
It's a really great movie, but it's very hammy. I mean, look. I mean, Winona just hams it up in what's his name?
Daniel Day
Uh,
Lewis.
Daniel Day Lewis just goes very ham at the end. but but great story that's still relevant. You know, when you get a bunch of fanatics
Oh, it
in
actually, you know, this movie has actually crossed my mind in recent weeks because we have seen all this shit on social media about people shaming other people for, you know, not following what are considered appropriate COVID protocol, as you say, and
hmm
it does actually feel like a witch hunt. Like
Oh
if
yeah,
you're not as righteous as us, you're a fucking bastard.
exactly. Yeah, and it's so quick to point fingers and to get people believing, and the hysteria grows. So, um, yeah, I just thought it's a good movie to watch for any time. It's a classic story. For those that don't know, The Crucible was actually written in the 1950s, and it was written as a response to McCarthyism when everybody was getting accused of being a communist.
And it was
Back
written by Arthur Miller, I
Arthur
believe.
Miller, and he wrote the screenplay, which I didn't know. He
He
actually wrote
did, yes, he did.
the so, um, and he banged Marilyn Monroe. So,
He married her.
well, yeah, he banged her too.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess the two don't necessarily go hand in hand, but
Not
they
always,
usually do.
but not always. Look at Liza Minnelli's marriages. Not always.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So, so good man, and it's a cool movie. And I think especially nowadays, we have so much fanaticism, not just religious, but political fanaticism. Um, and people tend to forget how easy it is to rile up a group of people to save their own skin, you know,
Right.
to not let people see what I'm doing wrong. And I had forgotten one of the key plot points in this movie is like the first scene. Winona, who plays Abigail, man, she's a total bitch. Like she's the biggest bitch in the history of bitches in movies. I know you hate Jenny from Forrest Gump, but Abigail takes because not only because I had always, I had forgotten this key plot point, which is I had always thought that hey, they were accused of being witches, but they actually didn't do anything. But she was actually out there in the woods dancing, and she like bit into the head of a chicken or something, had like blood all over her. So she was going hardcore, right? And her father finds her, and then in order to save her ass, then she starts accusing other people of witchcraft. So she says, "Oh no, it was the spirit of this lady that came unto me and made me go out into the woods and dance and do all these things." And that she and Daniel Day Lewis's character, John Proctor, they had sex, and she's trying to get vengeance for his wife. So she accused his wife of being a witch, which then leads to John Proctor getting mixed up with the law, and then he gets accused of witchcraft. So she fucks everybody's life, and at the end, she escapes. Like she takes 30 pounds or shillings or whatever they used back then
Yeah,
from her
yeah.
dad's casket and runs off to Boston by herself, and everybody else gets hanged. And I'm like, fucking bitch, man. I had forgotten that she was such an she's really the antagonist of this movie. It isn't
Yeah,
like
I think she's supposed to be a lot younger, though. Like, I don't know. Winona Ryder at that stage was probably about 30, but I think her character is supposed to be about 17. So
yeah, no, they're
you
all
can
teenage
kind of forgive
girls.
her for her judgment.
Oh no way, man. I mean, she planned that shit out really well. It's not like 17-year-old uh trying to, make stupid mistakes. Like she plotted like the murder of people,
Right.
just to save her own. And I don't know. She's very manipulative. As you watch the movie, you kind of get into like this very manipulative mindset. She even tries to say, "Hey, the devil can overtake anybody, even the judge." And the judge, that's when the judge is like, "Huh?" You know. But
Yeah, yeah. I remember that, actually.
yeah, like what did you say? She's a major bitch in this movie. But Winona, she played a lot of younger characters because she had the like that kind of young face, so she could
Yeah,
play
yeah.
younger.
No, no.
Yeah.
She still does,
So
man. She still, like,
yeah,
doesn't look a day over 40.
I know that was back in the Winona was it days. I loved her back in the day. She was
Oh, yeah.
the it actress, and I'm glad she kind of got back on um, with Stranger Things. But I'd like to see her doing some uh, playing some lead roles because such a cool actress. But she definitely goes over the top in this movie a lot. You kind of, it's very
Yeah, but
ham.
it's in a good way, though. It's in a good way.
Yes, yeah, yeah, and I love the actress that played John Proctor's wife. She at the beginning she didn't seem like she was gonna be that big of an emotional crux of the movie, but she does end up being. So yeah, definitely worth watching. It's paced very well, and it's a 2-hour movie, but it kind of flew by, and it's
It
very
goes by fast.
yeah, it's a fast 2 hours, and in the end is so great. Leave me my name, and then they hang him. Poor guy. So just a little bit
Yeah.
of love for the Crucible. If anybody hasn't seen it in a long time, it's worth the watch. Well, that's it, guys. We've talked for a little under an hour. It's 1 hour and 48 minutes. So today was a long broadcast.
We went
Uh,
overtime.
we went over time, and so just to review, I gotta go back here. We definitely recommend all of these movies. They're really good. We tend not to put movies on here that we hated, unless it's something we hate a lot. We
Yeah,
might,
unless you hate it so much, you really need to talk about it.
yeah. But we got this 4.5 hour documentary here in Search of Darkness for the horror fans, but even the non-horror fans who kind of want to get into the psychology of horror, what makes it so cool. check it out, and I think it'll make you want to go out and look to watch some of these movies. I know it did for me. Black is King. If you're not a Beyonce fan, like I was telling Pete, turn the volume down and just watch the fucking visuals, man. This is so. But the music's cool, man. It's not. It it's not very pop sounding. You know, it's a lot of weird like polyrhythms and kind of electronica mixed in, and this. It's not like all the single ladies type pop. You know, so even musically you might dig it on that level and just bake out and watch this shit. It's worth it for that. And any final thoughts on the end of the tour and La Casa de Papel?
Yeah, for sure. If you appreciate writing, I definitely recommend The End of the Tour. Also, if you like movies that are driven by dialogue, actors, and characters, and not necessarily alien makeup and martial arts fight scenes, um, it could be good if you enjoy movies driven by those types of devices. It could be a good one for you. And not only that, but you may leave it feeling the way I did, which is, fuck, David Foster Wallace. I should check this guy's book out because apparently it's 1,030 pages long. So it will keep you busy for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm intending on checking his book out. He's written plenty, but this is the one he's famous about. And as far as La Casa de Papel, hell, man, um, I like shows about bad people, and this is a show about bad people. Walter White, um, Tony Soprano, J.R. Ewing. I mean, the best shows are all about bad people. And this is a show about bad people. So if you like that shit, check it out.
And The Crucible is just a good fucking movie, and it's timeless story about when fanatics get into power and how quickly people can fall into mob mentality. You know, we all
Yeah.
kind of it's not it's something from the past. It really isn't. You know, it's so easy to
She's
get.
such a big faker, though. Winona, oh my god, she
Mhm.
hallucinates like a fake demon in the courtroom at one
Yeah,
point, doesn't
bird.
she?
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's over the top. That's what I'm saying. She hams it up. There's a few hammy performances in this, but it it works though. You know, ham is good sometimes. It works
yeah,
sometimes.
I like Amy.
Because it is a stage play, so I think screen, you just there's gotta be parts of it that are over the top because that's just the nature of the beast. You know, when you're on a stage, you
Yeah,
have
of
to
course.
over enunciate and do it over the top. I think that's what I don't know if you got a chance to watch the movie Fences with Denzel and Viola Davis. It's a really
Oh,
good movie.
I did, yeah.
It was a really good movie.
It was really confusing, but as a white person, it was hard for me to get. Actually, I believe I consulted you to explain that to me
Really? I
because it
don't
was so.
remember what Fences.
Yeah, yeah, because I was like, why is this considered a black movie? Like, it just seems to me like it's about a dude shitting on his son because he's an asshole. And you kind of
Oh,
explained it to me how he's jealous of his son because he's getting all these opportunities that he never got when he was a Negro League baseball player, and he doesn't want him to get his hopes up. And I was like, okay, that makes sense, but at the same time, this still feels like a vanity project from Denzel.
it definitely was a vanity project. But yeah, I don't remember ever explaining this to you, but pretty much that's it. But but what I think didn't work in the movie that well is that it it's a stage play, and they pretty much just got it almost word for word, and there's were talking as if they're in a movie, but the dialogue is more for big emotions, on the stage. So sometimes when they did that in the movie, it kind of took you out of the fact that it's a movie, because when they're just like,
Right.
"Ah, that's weird,"
Yeah,
it's like
it felt like a
movies don't
play.
require.
It totally felt like a play.
Yeah, like movies don't require that much emotion, um, but so it's hard. It's hard to do that sometimes to find the right measure, the right balance. I mean to say, of adapting play to screen, because you just got to tone it down a little bit, unless it's
Yeah.
Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and then you can scream all you want, and we love every
That
time.
that's a wonderful movie. Yes.
That's an insane movie. But anyway, that's it, people. And Pete, stay on for a second. And
All right, I'm gonna stay on for a second, but I have to piss so bad you cannot believe it, man. I'm almost about to wet my pants. So, give me
all
30 seconds to go to the can. It's like
right,
literally like right near me.
Pete is going to the bathroom, and I'm saying good night, people. Have a good one. Adios. Buenas noches.
All right.